Compañeros, welcome to the SQL Data Partners podcast, the podcast dedicated to SQL Server related topics, which is designed to help you become familiar with what's out there, how you might use those features or ideas on how you might apply them in your environments. I am Carlos L. Chacon.
And I am Steve Stedman. We are two data professionals trying to help others get a better handle on their database environments, either through this podcast, our training, or our consulting practice. Thanks for joining us on the SQL Trail. Welcome to the show.
SQL Data Partners.
So, compañeros, welcome again. This is episode 77. How are you today, Steve?
Doing good. Exciting to be our first episode.
I was born in 77. So this being, the 2017, it's my magic year where I'm going to turn 40. So I'm counting. The days are slowly creeping up on that number.
Wow. Okay. Well.
So in June, right, it'll all be over.
It'll all be over. That sounds so dismal.
Well, at least I've gotten there, right? And then we can move up. We can move forward from there.
There is life beyond 40, apparently.
Apparently, it will happen.
All right.
I'm excited about our guest today.
Yeah, this week's guest is Paul Turley. Paul is a principal consultant with Intelligence Business LLC. He's also a Microsoft Data Platform MVP, an author, speaker, and consultant. And I've known Paul for a few years, and I've met him at various SQL Saturdays in the Pacific Northwest and at a past summit as well.
Yeah, that's right. And lots of folks that go out to PASS like to check in there at the SQL Saturday, Oregon, before they head up to Summit. And I'm sure they've gotten to know Paul. Nice guy and fellow, and I'm excited to have him on the program today.
Yep. Oh, absolutely.
So as a reminder, ultimately, what we're doing here on the podcast is trying to help individuals, whether you're alone or whether you have a team, try to know and understand more about SQL Server. But if you find yourself in a rut, you feel like your environment's just not moving forward, or you need somebody to take a second look at it, don't forget that those are services that we can provide. So you can check out some of that at SQLDataPartners.com. And of course, taking a peek at the Database Health Monitor tool, that's available for free to help you kind of get up to speed. And again, if that's just not quite getting you where you need, reach out to us and we'd be happy to chat with you.
Yeah, we've got a survey out there now for Database Health Monitor, people who've used it, to get some feedback on what they think. And I know I've received, over the last 5.5 years or so working on Database Health Monitor, I've received a lot of direct emails, but those only come from a few people.
Right.
And I think that the survey is a great way that we can get some feedback from everyone. And if there's something you like or dislike, let us know and we'll see what we can do to improve it. That survey is available at SQLDataPartners.com/survey, and that links off to a SurveyMonkey site where we can just go through and put in some information that will help us steer the future direction of the Database Health Monitor application.
Yeah, that's right. It'd be super helpful for us just to get a wider sample, kind of see how people are using it, what you don't like about it, of course. It's just a couple, 9 or 10 questions, most of them are multiple choice. It'll be painless, and it would be super helpful for us.
Yep, and that's available at SQLDataPartners.com/survey.
That's right. So ultimately, our conversation today with Paul revolves around some of the reporting improvements in SQL Server 2016, and some of the things that have changed there.
Yeah, and that's an area that I'm excited about because I know Reporting Server didn't have an awful lot of changes for quite a while, and 2016 really changed that.
No, that's right. And Power BI has kind of been getting all this love. I know a lot of folks that have started using like the Tableau environment or Tableau application. And so reporting's kind of been hurting. And I know that there's enough reporting that we as administrators or data professionals can be doing. And so it's nice to be able to have some tools that we're a little bit more familiar with and not having to relearn all these tools and idiosyncrasies and, moving data in and out, all those things. So I'm excited about this conversation.
And the URL for the show notes is SQLDataPartners.com/reporting.
And with that, let's go ahead and get into the conversation with Paul. Hi, Paul.
Hello.
Thanks for being with us.
I appreciate the invite.
Paul's a principal talking. Paul's a principal consultant and with Intelligent Business LLC. He's a data platform MVP and author and speaker. And he's going to be talking to us. So we're going to be talking a little bit about some 2016 things, and particularly in the reporting space just a little bit later. But first, we want to say Happy New Year to everyone. This is our first podcast in the 2017, and we hope you got through the holidays well. Back to work, as this is going to be Wednesday we release our episodes, and so
I wish I had a noisemaker to bring in the new year.
Yeah, that's
right. Happy New Year, everyone.
Yeah, don't we have a button for that? There we go. There's the noisemaker.
Yeah, that's right.
So Happy New Year.
Here we go.
All right.
Not quite the same.
No, that's not the right one. Okay, so 2017, starting out the year right. I think started out with a podcast, and hopefully we'll do 52 more this year. And
that's right.
Keep doing what we do every week.
And who better to start out than with Paul?
Yep.
Right.
Well, thank you. I'm honored.
Yeah. If you're in the Portland area, you more than likely know Paul. He's been organizing or helping organize that SQL Saturday there for many, many years. And does a fantastic job. And of course, he's been in the community. And so we're delighted to have you on the show today.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here. And we had our first Oregon SQL Saturday this last year in Washington State at the
is that right?
Washington State University Vancouver campus. So that was a little confusing for people. Not only are we the other Vancouver, but we're in Washington State hosting Oregon SQL Saturday.
You know, that one, I wasn't able to make it to that one, but that did confuse me when I heard that the Oregon SQL Saturday was going to be at the WSU campus.
Right, which is in Pullman, which is a long ways away. And yes, I live in the other Vancouver that's not the Canadian Vancouver. I always like to have fun with that.
Which happens to be where my wife is from.
Uh-huh.
And so we go there and visit. That's why I get to go out to Portland every so often. And now that she's on the East Coast, she just stops saying Vancouver. She just says, I'm from Portland. Because it's too confusing.
Oh, that's heartbreaking. We don't identify ourselves as Portlanders. We like Portlanders, but we are our own community.
Well, Paul, today we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the 2016 features in reporting and kind of what's new. Now, you've been busy in this area and trying to help get everyone else up to speed with what's going on. Let's first talk about some of these things that you've been doing, and then we'll get into some of the other features later.
Sure.
So talk to us about the edX course and how that's going.
Well, we're actually in the middle of the first delivery of the edX course right now. And for anyone who doesn't know what edX is, .org, it's a training platform that was actually developed in a partnership between originally MIT and Harvard, now Berkeley and Stanford, and a whole bunch of big universities who maintain this training platform. And companies like Microsoft will actually pay to have their content hosted. And the price is good. It's free or $50. And these are substantial courses that have structure to them. They have labs and tests, and you can collaborate with other people, but it's all on demand, so you kind of take it at your leisure while it's scheduled to run. But there are hundreds of courses out there. Microsoft has great courses on R, Power BI, SQL, and now reporting services. And just as we're recording this, we're actually starting the third week of the 4-week class that I taught for Microsoft, contracted to have it hosted in edX. And the $50 option is that if you actually want a certificate that proves that you took the class and took the test and passed it, then it costs you $49 for that. So it's a pretty good deal for really inexpensive, convenient training.
Yeah, there you go.
So then for a course like that, is that sort of the introduction to SSRS, or is it just covering the new stuff in 2016, or is it more of a deep dive?
The topic and the subject matter for this course is focusing on visualizing data with reporting services. So, I do start out in an introductory level, but then move into an intermediate space pretty quickly. We do talk about new features in Reporting Services 2016, but it's not just an expose of new features. But then we do get into building KPIs and using the new mobile reports, which is introduced in SQL Server 2016. So I'd say about half of the content is new stuff in 2016, focused on mobility and visuality and visualizing. It's all about
Okay.
visualizing data.
So for someone who's doing a lot of tabular reports right now and they want to add some, I don't know, wow or some visualization to it, I think, is that the type of people that would be good?
Yeah, absolutely. So, good introduction to dashboarding, scorecarding, and using actions to navigate between reports.
Yep. Okay, great.
So that's the only teaching that you'll be doing. PASS is putting on an analytics day, kind of moved away from the conference, if you will, but they're still looking to bring people together. Let's talk a little bit about that analytics day and what you're doing there.
Sure. Yeah. January 11th is the PASS Business Analytics Day in Chicago. I'm doing a full day workshop on mastering Power BI. PASS has done the business analytics conference in the past for 3 years, I think, running now. And really what they found is that that community are all working professionals. They're not the kind of people who normally can unplug for a week and go to a conference. And so this is a shorter version and even a slightly more affordable version of a real focused event to get some good training. And it's put on by PASS, and they always do a bang-up job in organizing and getting good content. So it's a hands-on workshop. People bring their laptops. We help them get set up ahead of time, and then we'll provide data. It's real data. We're using the airline performance data from the FAA, and people will build a end-to-end BI solution using Power BI.
Oh, wow.
It should be a good time.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that can take off. I think one of the challenges with kind of an analytics day, if you will, or that community is that they don't share the same self in a number of different ways. And I think it makes it tough to get things going. But
it is. It's a challenge and it's an opportunity, which I think is why the folks at PASS have continued to persevere. The industry has changed radically.
Sure.
18 years ago, when I got started doing database work and BI work, it was really simple. You just had a handful of tools that were part of the SQL Server stack. You used either DTS or SSIS and analysis services and reporting services and SQL Server, and you could pretty much build anything for any company. But today, business intelligence and business analytics, which is related but a little more business focused than technology focused. Think of this big Venn diagram that has all of these different products and different disciplines and different objectives. It's massive. It's really hard to step back and take it all in anymore.
Yep. I think back in the beginning when you talk about that, there were fewer tools, so the right tool for the job might have been a much easier pick at that point. But now there's so many options and tools and ways of doing things. The right way of doing it might involve or might give you options of 15 different tools.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's interesting. A couple of weeks ago, I got an email from a couple of local students here in the Portland area, and they had a little bit of industry experience. These guys were going to a private tech university in Portland, and they were focused on business intelligence, but they had about 5 different curriculum tracks to choose from. There was a data science track, there was a DBA track, there was a data development track, there was a business intelligence IT track, and then there was a business intelligence. Anyway, there was lots of choices, which I think was just really what we're talking about, this challenge where the industry is very fragmented. It's moving in different directions because business is adopting technology in different ways. And anyway, these guys said, hey, we'd like to come and spend an hour with you and interview you and get some input from a real industry professional about how to focus our careers and how to think about classes that we want to take so we're prepared to get out there in the workforce after we get our degrees. And so we said, it turned out that it snowed that day, so we did it via web conference. But these guys kind of showed us all the curriculum, and they said, we're confused. We don't know where to go. Tell us what to do. And I just had to start with the standard consulting answer, which you can tell me, Carlos, what that is.
It depends.
It depends. Yeah, it depends on all kinds of things. It depends on where your interest is, where your passion lies. So my advice was go out and mutter, learn enough SQL and learn enough relational database discipline to understand if that's something that you're passionate about. And then learn reporting and learn Power BI and learn Tableau and learn some Hadoop and Spark and learn a little bit about data science and R and Python. And then you need to figure out what makes your heart thump. And then look at the industry and where you think the opportunities are. Nobody can tell you exactly what to do because there are golden opportunities in all of those fields.
Right. In addition to that, I think that reaching out to the community is also another big one.
Absolutely.
Just to kind of contrast and compare, if you will, like the R community and the SQL Server community. Now, those are, starting to intermingle a little bit more. But my understanding was the R community was, if you don't really know your stuff, is not a great community for beginners. Whereas the SQL Server community, a little bit more open, right, to that. Of course, PASS helps with that a lot. So I would think that reaching out to those folks to see what they're like, what they're interested in, kind of where things are headed, could also help direct that thought.
Yeah, agreed. We have something very unique within the SQL Server community. Our definition of community and that feeling of just genuine community support, people who get together, who blog and podcast and write and organize events, really do those things primarily because they love to. Sure. And it supports their careers and pays the bills. Where you find in other industries and around other disciplines, the mix is different. And I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but it's different. It's just a different recipe.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. And I know I've had the chance to interact with some other data communities, and they have certainly not been as enjoyable as what we've seen with the SQL community.
Mm-hmm. Right. I do have to say that, I'm involved with two different user groups in the Portland area. I help run the Oregon SQL group, which has kind of been the classic past chapter, focusing more on SQL Server development rather than DBA skills. But, it's still fairly traditional around the relational database engine. And I'm also involved with our Power BI group, which is a meetup and a Power BI community group. And that audience, though they do cross over quite a bit, is different. We get more business professionals who don't really think of themselves as being part of IT or being hardcore developers who, can do cool things with Excel, want to take it to the next level with Power Pivot and Power Query, and want to visualize data. And they use tools like Tableau and Click but they're attached to business. They're right. a controller or an analyst, for a business rather than a full-time analyst, for a business rather than a full-time developer. It's a real completely different vibe and different objectives altogether.
Sure. And to even, I guess, circle back and kind of throw a little fire onto this mix, if you will, is that when we think that, we're SQL Server people, right? If that line wasn't colliding, if you didn't see those worlds colliding before, SQL Server 2016 SP1 kind of
oh my gosh,
ensured that, hey, if you weren't on notice, here's your notice, right? That analytics
we have more choices than ever before.
Exactly.
I've given so many sessions at conferences, and I've been approached by consulting clients who just say, hey, we've looked at all of these products that could be used to build dashboards or reports. You got Excel and reporting services, and now Power BI, and in the SharePoint world years ago it was Performance Point, and which one should we use? And the reason that there are different tools is because there are different disciplines.
Right.
And within Microsoft there are different product teams who do develop software, somewhat within isolation, and then they kind of surface and try to make them work together. But long story short is that that's always going to be the case. And I think that the folks at Microsoft have done a better job of blending these tools better than ever before, but it's never going to be perfect. It's not a jigsaw puzzle that just where everything just fits perfectly.
Sure.
But the classic problem with reporting services reports is that we build these beautiful reports and to spec, and it meets all the requirements. And as soon as we put them in front of users, they say, "Okay, well, how do I export it to Excel?"
Yeah.
I want all of my formulas intact, and I want everything formatted correctly. And it's a hard problem. I think it's better than it used to be, but it's never going to be perfect just because they're different tools designed, with a slightly different audience in mind.
Which ultimately brings us to our topic today, right? Yep. And that is kind of reporting services or some of the reporting options in SQL Server 2016. Now, as you mentioned, we've had some issues with reporting services, and it really hasn't changed all that much. But it seems like, again, 2016 is kind of the edition that will make you take a second look.
Yeah.
So why don't you walk us through some of the new features or kind of what you see as the big highlights for this release?
Sure. Well, so a real brief history lesson. Reporting Services was originally released in early 2004, which means it was a product that was architected in 2002 and 2003. And, you think about technologies at the time, web services, the internet was fairly new, but that was the initial architecture of reporting services, and the versions that followed were the continuation of that architecture. So it kind of grew up and matured right around SQL Server version 2008 R2 in 2010, and then it plateaued. And I think that the attitude of leadership at Microsoft was, hey, this is a mature product. It's being used. People are paying for it. For the most part, it just works well. So we're going to leave it alone, put our resources into other things. And so it drifted quite a bit, and there are some cobwebs on it. And SQL Server 2012 came and went. 2014 came and went. Reporting services really didn't get much love. But there is a new commitment to BI and reporting at Microsoft. Part of it is that I think they've been listening to the community. We've been standing at the front gate with our torches and pitchforks, yelling, and so they've listened. Sure. And under new leadership that I think has really kind of crystallized at Microsoft, under Satya, reporting and BI under the direction of James Phillips, who I think has just done fantastic things to rejuvenate those teams. Reporting services is new. And what we're seeing in SQL Server 2016 is the beginning of this, big boulder kind of being pushed and gaining momentum. So we're going to see more and more goodness as things continue. So just let me go through the pick list real quick. The new stuff that you should pay attention to in SQL Server 2016 reporting services. Mobile reports. So they acquired the DataZen mobile dashboard tool. They got the KPI capabilities, and then they got the mobile report capabilities where mobile reports run on mobile devices, natively client.
Mobile stuff. I mean, you can only display so many reports, right? And again, that idea of, okay, now let me export this to Excel.
Right. And this tool isn't about that.
Sure.
It's not designed for that.
So where are you seeing those mobile reports be most effective?
In addition to paginated reports. And that I think is an important learning. When DataZen was originally released and Microsoft essentially said, if you have, enterprise edition licensing, then you can just download and install DataZen. I saw companies rushing out and saying, hey, we're just going to replace all of our reports with these DataZen mobile reports. Right. And that's not a good decision.
Sure.
Your multi-page, pixel-perfect reports that you want to print and export to PDF and Excel, those should still be in what we now call paginated reports and reporting services, classic RDL reports.
Right.
If they're consuming a lot of data, again, paginated reports. Mobile reports are a little lighter weight. The data sets have to be smaller because they run client side, which means the data has to stream to the device.
Oh, gotcha.
And I wouldn't create a data set that returned any more than 50,000 rows at the most. So somewhere between 10,000 and 100,000 rows is a practical limit there. But they're not meant to be busy and cluttered. They're meant to work on my smartphone. And they work really well on my smartphone or my iPad. where they're tactile or interactive. You've got, navigators and selectors. And then when you filter the data and you see what you want, a business leader can look at that, while they're sitting on the plane getting ready to take off and say, wait, why is that number so low? And they can tap and drill through to a paginated report where they can see all the transactional details. So the two used in concert work well.
Yeah, a question around that then. You say, it needs to be lighter weight for that data to go client side, but is it going client side as one transfer, and then when you're clicking around and going through to that paginated type data or viewing the reports, it's just using the same data that's already there?
Yeah, it gets cached.
Okay,
and there are a few different scenarios, so it's hard to say, it's always done this way. But I think what the DataZen tool was really primarily designed for was to get data from a data set onto the device where it's cached, and then a user can interact with it for a day until it gets refreshed again.
Okay, great. That's one of the things that, that'll make it so it's quick when you're clicking around or changing the views on it, rather than having to wait on the bandwidth.
It's in reporting services is that they completely overhauled the HTML renderer for paginated reports. And now the HTML renderer adheres to true HTML5 standards, which means that a standard RDL paginated report will work in Safari and Chrome and Firefox and, on your phone, on your tablet. So even if you're not using mobile reports, those reports will still render on a mobile device, just not with the real sharp interaction that I just described. And they'll work across different browsers.
Yeah, that's neat, because I know that, and it's funny, I guess, with all the rigmarole that we had as far as Microsoft putting the Internet Explorer in with the operating system, and of course this is dating us a little bit, talking about
Netscape Navigator, then Firefox.
Yeah, the Navigator. There we go. Right, but there's still a lot of choice in our browser. There's still a lot of choice in our browsers that we want, and it'll be nice that they work in more than one.
Yeah. Well, I think that the industry is actually arriving at some standards. And it's funny to see, I'll go to Microsoft events and everybody's presenting using Chrome, because that's the browser that works.
Yeah, that's right.
It's getting better, though.
Yep.
Let's see. We talked about mobility, and then, of course, the rendering.
Yeah. And then there's a handful of other things.
Sure.
And I think that it's there's a long list of little improvements and things that we can continue to see improve. Integration with Power BI is kind of big news. At first, in the RTM, the integration with Power BI was that a user can click on a visual on a report and then pin it to their Power BI dashboard up in the cloud, on a report and then pin it to their Power BI dashboard up in the cloud. That's cool, but it's not earth-shattering. Later this year, we're going to see on-prem integration with Power BI, where Power BI users can use Power BI Desktop, create a complete Power BI solution, and then go deploy their reports to a reporting services server on-prem without using the cloud, which is going to be really big news.
Sure.
Oh yeah, that's huge. I know that clients I've worked with that have considered Power BI have steered away from it because they don't want to send their data out to the cloud necessarily. They just want to use it through their own infrastructure.
Yeah.
And when that's
and then you get the benefits of scheduling, notifications, things like that as well.
Yeah. I'm not quite sure what all of the features that we're going to see in this first integration step, but all of those things are on the list.
Very cool. Now, do you think, from the database side, offers plenty of punch, right? But kind of looking at it from the reporting side, do you feel like it's worth making the investment to upgrade to 2016 to get some of these reporting capabilities?
Well, I would answer the question by saying that I have clients who are doing that for that reason.
Well, there you go. Makes sense to me.
What's interesting is that, we've gotten so used to a 3-year release cycle with SQL Server, and that's all changing. And it's a little disruptive, I think, especially for big businesses, because, SQL Server 2016 came out in June of 2016. And we're expecting to see a new version of SQL Server released in 2017. So those are, the major releases only a year apart. So,
right. And then we have the platform release to worry about. Now that it's not just on release to worry about. Now that it's not just on Windows, we have to think about it on Linux and
in the cloud, and keeping all of that in sync.
Oh yeah.
So things are changing, not only at Microsoft. I think within the whole industry. I think that software is more of this ever changing, evolving thing. DBAs and folks who run big companies have to think differently about how they install and maintain software.
Yep.
But, if you want these capabilities, then you really have to jump on the bandwagon. And, whether you're making a point to stay a year behind the curve or 2 years behind the curve, that's fine. But there's an upgrade cadence that is much faster, more aggressive than it's ever been.
Yeah, and it really seems like with that, if you're the type of business that likes to keep up with the newer versions, you're going to have a little bit more work to do that a little bit more often. But if you're the type of business that likes to get off of the SQL Server version right before its end of life, it seems like you're going to have much more work to keep up at that point because there's so many newer versions to go through than there were 10 years ago.
Yeah, good point. Absolutely. And I think that what is changing and what will continue to change is that, the reason that companies would stay 2 versions behind is because the latest product wasn't so stable.
Right.
And I think that has changed within Microsoft. Azure SQL Database is SQL Server 2016. It's been in production and it's in general use, supporting hundreds of thousands of customers. So, that concept of the latest version or the newer version of a product changes because it's being tested more thoroughly. It's actually been in general use longer, even before it's released, because of the cloud and because of the adoption of these cloud technologies. I think that changes the landscape, but people have to see proof. They have to experience that a newer version of SQL Server is more stable and is worth betting the farm on, so to speak.
Yeah, no, that's right. And it's still embarrassing when I think about it, but I can remember, this was early 2015, and Microsoft had come out with that mobile first, cloud first, mantra. It changed, CEO and whatnot. And somebody asked me, like, well, is that just marketing, or is that you think there's some truth to that? And I thought, it's just marketing. But now, 18 months later.
Oh, no, I just say at the time it may have been. Microsoft made a huge investment into the cloud, and they were looking at their bottom line and they had to recoup. But now I think the industry is demanding cloud services. We're all accustomed to being connected all the time.
And we are seeing, the culture, we're seeing the new, just new features and that testing as Microsoft is getting, again, they were kind of behind the ball a little bit with Amazon. Amazon kind of sucked up a lot of that space in the beginning. And then as they've kind of caught up, we are seeing those processes put into place where the testing is there. Things are just more reliable, more steady. How do you use that word?
Sure.
And I think as people experience that with the newer versions, then the fear will go down and hopefully adoption will increase.
Well, and it is. We see a trend in that direction. I think that Satya's approach with Azure was, if we build it, they will come. They needed to demonstrate value and demonstrate trust.
Right.
If I put my data in Microsoft's cloud or anybody's cloud, how do I know it's going to cloud? How do I know it's going to be there tomorrow? And how do I know it's going to be secure? And, 5 years ago, I think that was the first question on people's mind. I think that people now trust that cloud services are reliable. Companies like Microsoft and Amazon and IBM are incented to play fairly and to protect your data and to make good on the promises that they've made. And how is that any different than using rack space or putting, building your own data center and connecting it to the internet?
Right.
There are always risks. The mainstream cloud services in many ways are much less risky than actually exposing your own hardware to the cloud or the internet.
Well, awesome.
So it's interesting times. Interesting times.
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
That's right.
So I would be remiss if I didn't plug my book.
Oh yes, let's talk about your book for a second.
All of those books, I've done them with co-authors, and I've worked with partners and other writers, and decided to go it alone this year, and had absolutely no idea of how much work I had signed up for. And though it is another edition, so we did use some of the work that was applicable from the 2012 book. Grant Paisley's work is still in that book, as well as some of my other co-authors. But anyway, it was a lot of work, and we actually wrapped up writing the book in August, September-ish, but then began tech reviews and just all of the work that goes into making a good quality technical book. And so it should be out in mid-January now. Really looking forward to it.
So when you say decided to go it alone on that one, was that alone as the only author, or are you self-publishing that as well?
Oh, no.
Publishing that as well?
Oh, no, I'm not self-publishing. I'm with Rocks Press, which is, John Wiley Publishing, one of the largest publishers in the world.
So it's still with Rocks Press.
Yeah. I admire people who can self-publish, and I know a few people who do that, folks like Teo Lachev, and what a marvelous thing, but gosh, a lot of work.
Yes, having just gone through it, I can assure you that, like you, I spent a better part of a year just all the different pieces. And then, with the self-publishing part is that once a book is ready, you still have to do the hard part of actually marketing it and getting it all out there.
Yeah. Yeah. So remind me, Carlos, what did you write last year?
So I wrote a book, released it actually December of 2016. It quote unquote was released. It's called Zero to SQL. And it is an introductory SQL book, aimed at beginners. So select star, think like that, and then kind of going from there. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, so I've said this every time I've been involved in writing a book, that I have to imagine, not that I know, I have to imagine that writing a book is something like giving birth. It's something that you won't do again till enough time has gone by that you've forgotten about at least a lot of the pain.
No, that's right. Yeah,
I'm going to catch hell for saying that, but...
And I'm not even going to jump in on that part of it.
Yeah. Well, maybe a different analogy would be putting on a SQL Saturday event, right? So something similar to that.
I think that's in the same category.
Yeah.
I only do it once a year.
So should we do SQL Family?
Yes.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
So, Paul, how did you first get started with SQL Server?
Oh, gosh. So, when I started out in the industry, first doing tech support and then training for a small software development company in Arizona, they made medical accounting software. I used a number of products. I used Clipper and Clarion, and then I learned Access. I was actually using Access at Hewlett-Packard and really getting beat up by the real database people. Say, that's not a real tool. That's not a real database. When I was introduced to SQL Server 6.5 back in the 90s, boy, the light just came on. The idea that it was stable and trustworthy and, scalable, boy, that really kind of rocked my world to just kind of comprehend that software could run on a server and serve up, real serious business data for lots of users. And I don't know, I just never stopped after that. It just got better and better and better.
Yep. Okay. It's been interesting since we started asking that question. A lot of people have said that Access has been their step, that they started using Access, and then that led to SQL Server eventually.
Gateway drug.
Yeah, the gateway. That's right. I won't touch it again. I keep saying that, but I've actually used it on a few client projects.
If you could change one thing about SQL Server, what would it be?
All right. I pondered this question quite a bit, and I could not come up with one thing that I just said, that's the one thing that just bugs me that I wish they would change or fix. So last night, An associate of mine runs a software company. They took their company clients, partners, a software company. They took their company clients, partners, friends out to see Rogue One last night.
Oh,
and
wow.
as I was standing there with all of the geeks having geek conversation, I say, hey guys, I'm going to be asked this question tomorrow morning, and I want to take a poll. What's the one thing about SQL Server that you'd like to change? What was interesting is that nobody said the same thing. There was no consensus around anything that was broken, that needed to be fixed. One person said, improve IntelliSense. In my mind, IntelliSense works pretty well in Management Studio.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe because it didn't work so well before, and I just appreciate what they changed. SQL Server is awesome. It's not perfect, but I just can't think of one thing that I wish would be changed right away.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, then, can you share with us what the best piece of career advice that you've ever received is?
Yes. Yes. My father was a career counselor and a college counselor.
Okay.
And he always taught me from a very early age, he said, Paul, always tell the truth. And throughout my childhood, he said, always tell the truth. Till I interviewed for my first job and I didn't get it because I was so truthful about all of the things that I couldn't do and my lack of experience. He said, all right, it's time for lesson number 2. Always tell the good truth. And that stayed with me. And it's funny, but you really do need to stay positive. You need to stay focused on being optimism and looking on the bright side. And sometimes that means that you just don't share all of the bad news, so you tell the truth, but always tell the good truth.
There you go. Good
Interesting.
stuff.
I like that.
Our last question for you today, Paul. If you could have one superhero power, what would it be and why do you want it?
I fielded this question with the group last night as well, because, everybody wants to fly. I'd love to be able to jump from building to building and wear a cool spandex suit. Not that I could do it justice.
And look good in it. That's the other thing.
I think that I don't know of a superhero who really does time travel well, but that's the thing that I would like to be able to do. If I could go back in time. I am reminded of the one of the older I think it was the original Superman movie where Lois Lane was killed in the earthquake, so he went up in space and he circled the world really, really fast and made it spin backwards.
Oh, yeah.
I think that would have actually been extremely disruptive and thrown everybody out into space. But for Superman, it turned back time and he was able to save Lois Lane. So I think that's what I'd like to be able to do.
There you go.
Nice.
Well, awesome. Paul, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. The opportunity, guys. It's always great to chat with both of you.
Now, we did talk about the book. We'll make sure that we have a link. Now, the book will be coming out, I guess, shortly after this episode goes live. We will include a link to the book and to the edX information on the show notes.
Yep, fantastic. And the edX courses run often. They run frequently, so people can sign up and take it probably shortly after this runs. They'll be able to take it on demand.
You can get the show notes for today's episode at SQLDataPartners.com/reporting. We'll have that episode and a few other details there. You can get to the things we've talked about here today.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, guys. Really appreciate being able to be on your show, chat.
So interesting things coming down the pike. I admit that I probably need to get my hands a little more dirty there in some of that, but I'm interested to see how some of these features play out. But it also kind of gives me not pause necessarily, but it's important to remember that as data professionals or people writing those reports, we're going to have to start asking more questions about what those reports look like, particularly when you start talking about things like mobile. Right, and how I'm going to apply, give these out to, my C-level folks on their mobile phones. We're going to have to make sure that we understand what it is that they're looking for and can present that well.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that, report servers seem so limited in the past. Now there's just so many opportunities to do really impressive reports. Yeah, I think it's a great improvement, and I'm looking forward to giving it a try.
No, that's right. Yeah, and even being able to use different browsers. Freeing yourself from some of those limitations. Yeah, I'm hoping that it does give us more tools, more flexibility to show some of those things, and ultimately to be able to turn that around a little bit faster. I must admit, I guess in the BI space, maybe that's a little bit different, but their report writing is not too many people's favorite thing to do.
That's true. So keep in mind, as you're listening to this episode at the beginning of January, that on January 11th at the PASS Business Analytics Conference, that Paul will also be doing a presentation on mastering Power BI. So if you're attending that, it might be worth checking that out.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, if you're in that Chicago area or have time enough to go, always interesting in hearing him talk. Again, some of the things that we've talked about today will be up on the show notes at SQLDataPartners.com/reporting.
And if you're a Database Health Monitor user, don't forget about the survey at SQLDataPartners.com/survey. We'd love to get your feedback.
Yep. And of course, you can reach out to us on Twitter. I am at Carlos L. Chacon.
And I am at SQL.
SQL Data Partners.